The Musqueam people now live on their traditional reserve, located south of Marine Drive in Vancouver, BC. Bearing a strong interest in the current Musqueam society, we took a trip to the reserve and discovered that they have developed a comprehensive set of structures, including an administration office, a recreation center, and a culture pavilion where members hold exhibits, lectures, and educational tours on a frequent basis.
But in order to grasp thoroughly the lives of Musqueam peoples, for example, their health condition, their cuisine, and their education, we interviewed Morgan Guerin, the elected councillor and senior Aboriginal officer for the Musqueam First Nation, who provided us with meaningful insights for every aspect of their lives.
Okay, so would you mind introduce yourself a little bit?
My name is Morgan Guerin. I'm an elected councillor for Musqueam First Nation. I'm also the senior Aboriginal fishery officer for Musqueam, and I've been doing that for about 20 years. Born and raised in Musqueam, and my ancestral name is Setsaleno.
Would you mind talking a little bit about the history of your community?
The Musqueam community, well, the Musqueam Nation, the Musqueam people, have been living on this little piece of earth. I've been living on this little piece of earth for, the oldest village we have is about 15,000 years old, up in the sort of Port Coquitlam Moody area, as well as the village of Sequexin, which is about 9,000 years old underneath the Alex Fraser Bridge. This predates the actual land forming and coming out of the ocean, so say the city of Richmond is part of Musqueam's story rather than Musqueam living in the city of Richmond. So, we have always been here, and our oral histories have been validated by those who require validation over the years.
Like how
Well, our oral histories lent to letting people know that, say, the area known as up by Tawasin there was actually an island at one point in time, and this is thought to be a fallacy, the Point Roberts area. And of course, our oral histories now have been validated by saying no, the geographical buildup of the area actually said that at one point that was an island where the 2 points met. So, these sort of things.
So where do the current Musqueam, this community, where?
Our reserve base is actually here in this village in Musqueam, so they are very typical North Arm and Fraser out by UBC, as well as we have a small parcel out in Ladner, Musqueam IR number 4. Musqueam IR number 3 is across the way by the airport on the Sea Island side. And there was another village reserve site that was up in New Westminster as well. But there was a forced sale of that from the Musqueam people. That was Musqueam Reserve number 1. So that said, the traditional territory of the Musqueam people encompasses from here to the mountains up to the north, all the way back through to Coquitlam, going around the entire Delta area, Richmond, Ladner, and then all the river in between. When the city of Vancouver enacted the Vancouver Charter, saying that this is the area the Musqueam can have as a reservation, it was the smallest parcel of land bestowed upon any Indian nation, because it was said, and the Musqueam used the sea as their home. So it's a very, very small land base, and it was part and parcel because of how valuable the land was around us to other people. So.
Okay. So what is the native language of Musqueam?
The native language of the Musqueam people is Hunkaminam, and Hunkaminam is spoken here. The language is the same as on the island, except it has a different dialect, which is Hulkaminam. And there's another separate dialect which is up the valley, which is Hulkamelan. But all three of those are the same language with different dialects. So slight little changes. Different from our cousins, the Squamish, they have their own language.
Like I've been here 2 times. I hear that most people speak English here. So what is like the percentage? How often do you speak your native?
Almost never anymore. Yeah, and the reason for that is the residential schools, it was made illegal to speak. You'd be beaten through assimilation. You would be beaten if you spoke Hunkaminam. So many of our elders actually have an outright fear of speaking their language. It's built into them. They were beaten as children if they spoke.
So you were born and raised speaking English?
I was born and raised speaking English. However, I was lucky enough that my grandfather speaks Hunkaminam and my grandmother speaks Hulkaminam with a Kuper Island accent, which is, so it's a dialect with a subdialect. So I grew up in a house that was speaking both back and forth to each other. So I was very lucky.
So you know how to speak both?
I can understand both. Speak is different, but I can understand.
It's really different from English?
It is completely different from English. Yeah. The grammar is 100% different. You have to actually think. We say think in Indian in order to be able to speak. So,
what are some traditional events that Musqueam have?
many. Naming ceremonies, coming of age ceremonies, deaths, funerals. Every one of those ceremonies, those changes in life have a ceremony.
Can you elaborate a little bit? And what are the implications of this event?
Unfortunately, in some ways I can't because they're, how do we put it? And I'll explain why. They're considered to us to be a medicine. Okay? They're a medicine. They're something to make you better. So the ones that are left behind after a funeral, the ones that are left behind after someone's been dead for a while, a memorial, the changing of life. We have people in our community we would call a doctor, and they know how to use those medicines. So that said, where do you keep your medicine? It's in a medicine cabinet. You know it's there. You know the medicine exists. But to delve into how it works and what it does, it's not for the person who isn't the doctor. Right? So that's why. It's not meant to be, we want to be secret. It's actually meant to protect people.
Okay.
So from our understanding, if it's used improperly, it can hurt someone.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate a little on marriage and kinship structures of the community? Like it's monogamy or polygamy?
Yeah, it's monogamy now.
Like a standard family or nuclear family?
Yes, I guess it's been assimilated into your standard westernized structure. You have monogamy, mother-father marriage, children born out of it, or even
How
if
about in the past?
in the past it was not. It was not. There was I guess polygamy would be the closest one. A man could have multiple wives, a wife could have multiple husbands. However, there was a structure that was also there with that as well. And it was a structure not
Like
of
a certain number of wives?
well, not of wives. It's how your responsibility to each person that's inside of your family. So if you've got more wives or more husbands than you can handle, then you've done something wrong. You've stepped outside of that, and you have a responsibility to each one of those. And that's just marriage, let's say. But that's a very 30,000-foot level view of it. The finite intricacies of the laws and responsibilities and rules that surround it, it would take days to explain. And it's not practiced now. Like I said, we've adopted the more westernized.
Now everything's like Western now.
Yeah, and that's just the way it is. But we have an understanding of the way it used to be. But we even have words for an alternate spouse. And there's the word for alternate spouse, and then if they're speaking in relation to each other, how that works as well. So there's many words that speak to that as well. So,
That's really cool.
yeah.
And regarding gender, does the Musqueam community have a specific division of labor?
How do you mean?
Like some labor, like some jobs are are assigned for female or some jobs are assigned for men?
Oh, right. Yes, yes, and in many ways, never to shell the two. If a man goes out hunting and the lady puts it together. And also, those jobs are not also divided by any sort of power structure. Everyone is responsible for what they're doing. In fact, the Musqueam word for a lady in Hokomena is slanny. And slanny means the one who binds things together. So it makes you think of weaving. However, the connotation is much deeper. Musqueam is matrilineal, matriarchal-ish.
Oh, really?
So grandma's boss. So when you say a slanny, the one who binds things together, it's the one who takes your past and melts it into your present. The one who takes two halves and makes a life. The one who keeps a community together. The one who keeps the laws and pass it forward. So there's a lot of meaning in that when it comes to those things. So there are very, very gender-specific roles in Musqueam.
So it has like connotation of power.
And it can, but it can also be very its own thing. To a point, when the men do the speaking, okay? The men do the speaking, and the rationale for that is we're also a warrior society. So you don't put the lady who's your treasure and your history provider and your keeper and your judge and your lawmaker in front in order to be put in a position where they can be heard. You put your warrior forward, and he's the one who uses the words. His words
being really protected
are their words. Yeah, you have to get through the warriors to get to the treasure of the community. On the outside, some people it perceives to be something else because you're looking at it with a westernized mindset. But when you understand where it's coming from, that man was meant to die, if need be, in order to protect the ladies. So.
Yeah, that's really cool. And is there any shared rights and roles between the two genders?
Sorry?
Is there any like shared rights and roles between the two genders, like what they do like together?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean that's true just about every culture around the world. So absolutely, there are things that you absolutely do together. You share the workload. So if it's from fishing, packing to fishing, you'll be doing the cutting, you do it together. From the past to the present, this is still very much. In Musqueam, things don't belong to you, you belong to them. So in Musqueam, you're not entitlement isn't being part of the nation, it's what you put into the nation. So the community sort of stay together. We have they call it like a beehive mentality. You all have to work together, nuts and bolts, to be of one heart and one mind. So that's when your work gets done. So absolutely, there's a lot of things that we do together.
And this might be a little bit sensitive, but does the community have a cultural concept that is somewhat similar to like LGBT?
I just had this conversation earlier today when we were talking about the old days in Musqueam. Prior to, I mean, now it's just how people feel and the sort of more modern role of that. Mm-hmm. In the past, it was said if a person was, say, to be gay, there's Bob, there's Doug, they're together. That's not what your role is. Bob is the carver, Doug is the one who builds houses, because that's what they put into the community. What they do themselves is their own business. So there was no sort of ostracization for that. So it was just everyone lives their own life. And you might refer to the one as his spouse, but there was no differentiation between him being a gay spouse. It was just, that's his spouse. So it was just more fluid than that.
Allowed to get married and
yeah, but it would be, they'd be living together doing all the same as they did before.
Okay. Yeah. What are some distinct characteristics of Musqueam art? And then do they have any symbolic meaning?
Absolutely. Being a culture that's orally spoken, art would be the closest thing to something that was written. And it's to let you know who you are. Say the house posts that are from. Musqueam doesn't have totem poles, we have house posts. Because we do not have totems of the elements looking after us. They'll be reflected in some of it. However, when you look at the house posts, there are ancestors or the teachings of our ancestors. because the house posts are your ancestors holding your home up that you live in. So the house posts you see out front, say for instance, if you're looking at them on the left is my 5th great grandfather, and then his brother-in-law on the other side, and they tell the stories of their lives. And to be, fearless, to be brave, but to be smart about it before you walk through those doors. So they very much have a lot of symbolization and a lot of meaning. And in Musqueam, you'll see a lot of work with elements to portray something,
water,
or
fire.
you just carve a man. So you don't need to make the man out of the elements. You just carve the man and then put the elements around him, much like you live life.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's mostly made out of wood, I think.
Mostly,
like the carvings.
the material is mostly out of wood, or jade and nephrite was another material that was used quite a bit.
Can you name some traditional Musqueam food?
Fish, of which I just partaked in, salmon, sturgeon, ducks, geese, bears, elk, and we had our own subspecies of elk here, which are now extinct, deer, beaver, just about anything that lived in this area.
And how often do you eat traditional
Yes.
dishes?
Yeah, we eat probably once, 2 or 3 times a week, depending. Every family's different, but myself about 2 or 3 times a week. And I do most of my own harvesting, so I either go fishing, or my cousins go fishing, or I do my own hunting for those.
Hunting?
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
What are some common religious beliefs among the community?
Now, here's the thing: we have your usual organized religions. There's some Catholicism, Protestant that have been mixed in. Those were introduced, so we have people who follow those faiths. Now, we also have our culture, and some think that our culture borders on a religion because it's a set of beliefs.
So there's clashes between
There's
culture
clashes between culture and religion. But our culture also has a set of teachings that we believe. These things that I say no, because from our perspective, these are the things that we know. But they have some rules, and some of those rules, to some, border on feeling like a religion. Like you don't go out after sunset at a certain time because of these certain things. But to us, it's a teaching so you don't get hurt. So there's a few clashes with that. So a lot of people do have adopted the outside religions, well, outside from what we've had over here for the last 15,000 years. So their culture is based on the land and how we're connected to the land.
And how do you practice religion?
Well, those who go to church, they go to church, and then the rest of us, those of us who practice our culture, it's what we do every day.
Oh.
Today,
Yeah.
open the door. You have some guests coming into your house. It's an honor to have guests coming into your house. Gordon says, ask me as a cousin. I have some people who want to learn a little bit about us. It's my job to do that. It's part of our culture. So to do it in a respectful way and the right person to do it. We have our dances that we host in our longhouse across the way. We do most of them in the winter, or we host them out in the field, and we bring our masks and our dances and these sort of things out. So it's practiced in many of those kind of ways. But it's also the teachings that we have to our children. Right? When you're around your elders, you don't speak loudly, you speak quietly. If someone's passed, you stay inside. The children don't go outside, they're too sensitive to it.
Yeah,
These
like
sort of things.
politeness.
Yeah, like
Would you mind talking a little bit about political structure within your community?
currently, the current structure that we have in the community is an elected chief and council. So every 4 years, we have a 4-year term. People are nominated. Yep, people are nominated for either chief, which is the head councillor, or council, of which I sit on. So, and then you're elected by a vote. So a bounce vote. So pretty much same as everywhere else in the Western world. Previously, before families would meet together, all the families would come together and meet. They'd have, and as I spoke, one person standing up to be the voice. So they would speak until they find consensus on an issue, and that's how we're going to move forward.
Like within a tribe.
And within the tribe. So this whole nation here, Bob murders Doug. Bob sits in the middle of the floor, and the community figures out what to do with him. And for the most part, it was banishment. If it was something of that nature, you're just not part of us. And then you're open to the elements, raiders, everything else. So you're on your own. You're not part of the family anymore. So these sort of things, which would be scary, almost a death sentence. So,
Yeah, and there are a few questions about the current condition. So overall, on the 10 to 10 basis, how much are you satisfied with current living condition of the community?
I want to say a 7, maybe an 8. It's good, however, it's not good for everyone.
So what are you satisfied and what are you like unsatisfied about?
We need more space and more infrastructure to build more houses. We are currently working on that by way of going through and doing development. We have a new resource to work on, real estate, to bring in those finances so we can fund those infrastructure so that we can have the housing.
Housing is really expensive.
And housing is expensive even to build in the Lower Mainland. However, that said, I feel better about where it is now than where it was when I was young, which is not that long ago, 25 years ago.
So what are some improvements?
There are more houses around. The houses that are being built are to a standard that is much greater than they were in the past. We're putting in blocks of 40 houses when we can. We're in a position where in a few years the infrastructure money will be there to put in those infrastructures. So there's a hope on the horizon instead of what are we going to do. But that said, our population is growing too, so there's a lot of work to be done.
And do you have any connections with other tribes?
Absolutely.
Do you have events together?
Absolutely. In a way, they might have another name, but a lot of us are related. So the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, Coquitlam, Kwantlen, Tsawwassen, Katzie are realistically one large nation. But we are the people of the eelgrass, the people of the inlet, the people of the... We all speak the same language. The Squamish are our relatives too. Most of them are married in. So the family interconnections have made us families.
What are some similarities and differences between these tribes?
Well, those other ones that I mentioned are practically the same. In language and culture and everything, they're almost identical. There's just a little bit of geographical reference for these are the ones who take care of that section. These are the ones who take care of that section. But other than that, from here to the island, here, Vancouver Island for this coastal section through down and all the way down to Lummi is the same culture. So maybe different languages, different dialects of the languages. However, the same culture.
And you said housing is a challenge for your community. What are some other challenges the community is trying to overcome?
The outfall of the
Like
residential
education,
schools
health,
is
language, economy, and so on.
all of the above. For those reasons, we're coming out of the dark age. Well, that we're going home now? I know. Oh, did you? Fun. And a lot of that is to build self-sufficiency and within the individuals to understand that, to go back to that system that I have, we all pay into the community rather than you are an individual, you stand out. You can, but your job is inside the community. The residential school system forced assimilation and to make good little worker bees. So it's to put those culture back in and to excel into all those areas, to make sure that our economy's going so that we're building what we need to build, so that our housing situation is not only satisfied, but built for the future, so that it will continue, because our population is only going to grow back to historic levels prior to the plagues in the 1800s. And if we do that in a Musqueam way, we will survive, because we will continue to be Musqueam people rather than an assimilated people. Then we just become another municipality.
So what do you think are some like good solutions to these problems?
I think just that, to go back to, or to maintain who we are, and to do it in the way that our ancestors have asked, with just the only difference is get your degree and then make sure you're looking after your people and yourself. Our new resource is real estate. Where it used to be fish, it was a commodity, we trade, we buy, we barter, and that's where we're a warrior society. The food was at our doorstep to build our culture. We could trade for things with it. In fact, Cessnock was the world's largest trading port in its day. 5,000 years ago, bar none. There were none as large as right here in Musqueam. So get back to being those people. Resourceful with what resource you're using, but to take care of it as well, so it works towards the future. If we do that and use the teachings of our ancestors that passed along, it's about being together, and together you're stronger.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Could you talk a little bit about the health condition of the Musqueam community, including like overall health of your community and some health trends and concerns worth of addressing?
A lot of it is having moved away from our traditional diet. More of a store-bought diet has shown a lot of health problems. We have an alarming rate of diabetes and heart disease, obesity, things of these nature, but those go hand in hand with those, because it's not part of our tradition or culture to be this way. We're very much, like I said before, a warrior society. You're meant to be healthy, always ready, physically fit, capable. However, with the lack of our day-to-day life being stripped away from us and having to re-amalgamate into something else has really hurt those sort of teachings and trends that we used to have. We're slowly getting back to where we need to be, but it's an uphill fight. And a lot of that too is like the fishing and hunting. Well, it's not like we can go hunting here anymore. We have to drive at least 6 hours away, at least, in order to get in an area which might have some animals in it to hunt. Fishing, this declining stocks that we've seen in the Fraser River bound sockeye is just, it's devastating, catastrophic levels, and has never been like this historically. So we're living in almost an extinction level event right now. So, and we're tied to those fish, so as part of our diet. So a lot of these things come into play. So sugar was never part of our diet. The simple carbohydrates like bread and whatnot were never part of our diet. So, but now are staples of just about everyone's diet around us.
Speaking of education, has the education system of Musqueam people changed from the past?
The structures change, but not the education system.
Can you describe the education system?
The education system of the past is you were expected to be a jack of all trades and a master of at least one. Is the best way to put it. You're supposed to be have capacity and capability across the board, but you should be known for something, and that's if you want to aspire to be a respected person. So be it a doctor, a pharmacist, and we had all these in our system before. A carpenter, a builder, and there was no distinction given over one to the next because each one played the same important role. So, as long as you were the best at what you were doing, and you still had the capability of taking care of yourself and other people around you.
And then now it's the same.
And now it's the same. It's just you have your school system and everything else to go through. But at the same rate, I am an elected councillor, I'm a fishery officer, I'm an artist, I make tools in our own old ways, I mend nets, I'm a cultural ambassador. When they ask me what I do for a living, I usually say I'm Morgan. I get paid to be Morgan. So I'm an environmental response officer for Coast Guard, I've been seconded to Coast Guard, I work with the RCMP surveillance. You're meant to do many things, but when it comes down to which one I'm best at, I'm not even sure yet. It's for the people to recognize what you are, and then they stand you up for that. So now we do that in our education system now. You're going out to be a doctor, but when you come home, you're also expected to do other things as well. Don't rest your laurels, as it were. Rest on your laurels.
So what do you think are some advantage and downfalls of this change? Like, is there any downfalls?
In the education system,
Yeah.
as it were. The problem with the education system as it is it's off-site. And our education system in the old days is where you learned everything about your culture. You lived and breathed it. So if I was teaching you how to weave or teaching you how to knit or out in the forest teaching you where the medicines were, you learned all the history that went with it. That oral tradition would keep going, right? So that said, you would pass along all these other tangibles that go with it. All these other, you build a mind map of all these things that come into the one. So you have a complete comprehensive understanding of something rather than just a one-line introduction to something, which makes you more well-rounded and in the end a true expert of what you're doing.
Yeah. And are the course structures of Musqueam student different from those of like non-Musqueam?
The which?
Like other tribes, like the education system, is there any difference between the tribes?
Not too much. Not too much. Not around here from the way you were taught to the way you're brought up. For the local Coast Salish, well, Coast Salish is too broad for the local Salish Basin tribes. So Vancouver Island, Lower Vancouver Island, and then us over here.
So there's no like special courses for Musqueam children?
No. No. We do have a First Nation language course teaching Musqueam, but that's not open for Musqueam children. That's open for everyone. You can take that at UBC.
So they learn everything in English, not their native
In
language.
English, yeah. We would love to change that, and I've actually done a trip to New Zealand to visit the Maori, who have adopted that system as well. It's an immersion school in Maori, so which is very interesting and something that we're looking at.
Are there any efforts to preserve Musqueam's traditional culture and values through education?
Through education, absolutely, but what we consider education is what everyday living, and that's our understanding of it. So it's not just a structured, you sit down and this is how you do it, because when you do that, you lose, as I spoke to before, a lot of those external sort of tangibles that put it in. Those are just as important as what you learn from here to there. We're not allowed to dabble with something in Musqueam. You have to completely understand it comprehensively before you can say, I know that. So it's not until most people are in their 40s and 50s are they actually starting to speak about what they've learned. Because that's about the time that you understand. One of the reasons why our elders are so sacred to us is because they've taken that accumulation from the ages and they have enough understanding on the subject to actually speak
And
about it.
basically you have to experience.
You have to experience life. So I've done it, it didn't work. I've done it, it didn't work. I've got it now. Okay. But with the teachings, you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. You've understood it a lot faster, which means then you can learn the next piece, the next piece, the next piece faster. So that's been from our old education system, an understanding of how to learn. That's a win right there. You understand things faster and more comprehensively. But to teach the culture through education, it has to be done in our old way. It has to be.
Do you have any other concerns regarding the current education for the Musqueam community?
I would like to increase participation from our grade 12 students to go out into the world to pursue the degrees that they're going to need. Bring some of them to bring them home, but when you bring yourself home, you have that knowledge. Put some use into your community and build your community.
So after they graduate from high school, do they usually go to university?
Some do. So some.
But
the
some
rates-
might not come back.
Some might not come back. And our our high school graduation rates used to be actually not good. But they've built up where they're actually doing a lot better now. So I think we're only, instead of having 5% graduate from high school, it's of the ones who are going in, only 5% don't. So it's actually flipped the other way. So I'm very proud of that. But I want to see that trend progress. College, all the post-secondaries, university, even if it's a trades, what you do, it doesn't matter what you do, there's just as long as you do it well and come back to it. So.
Yep. And in your opinion, which aspects of your culture do you hope to promote? And what are some effective methods to achieve this goal?
Oh, promote, say, to the outside world?
Yeah.
Now that's interesting, because in the past, it's just really to promote that we are who we are. And this is who we are in Musqueam. We are the original stewards who belong to the land. And we are very much still here. The other aspects of the culture, if someone wants to know about them, then they can come to us to learn about them. Because maybe we won't teach you everything, as I've said before.
Yeah.
Some things are medicine. And there is no entitlement from, even inside of Musqueam, just because you're Musqueam doesn't mean you're entitled to understand all of these things, because maybe you weren't meant for it. Not everyone, we all know that chemotherapy exists, and as human beings, if we have cancer, then we would want maybe to go down that road. But it doesn't mean that everyone is entitled to be a chemotherapy technician just because you're a human being. So that understanding in Musqueam is the same way, and it carries out very much. However, we find people go, I want to know who you are. I want to know why you wear the feathers. I want to know why you... That's not for you. It's invasive, right? So just to promote that we are still very much here, and we're still very much a thriving culture that is getting back to who we always were. I think that's what I would like to promote.
Okay.
And we are very proud people for that.
Okay. Last question. What are some stereotypes many outsiders bear that are not true, or what are some stereotypes that are actually true?
I would say your stereotypes are the ones that have always followed our people. Alcoholic, lazy, these sort of things. When quite frankly, that's not true of Musqueam. We have always been fearless but intelligent for those reasons. Not just be a warrior because you're angry, but be a warrior with tactical precision. To make a negotiation with tactical precision, to stand up for what's right, but to understand if you're wrong, that you may have to take a different direction in order to win the fight. Two of the largest landmark court cases in Canadian history are the Sparrow and Guerin decisions, which are here in Musqueam. We brought towards, out of the top 10 cases. Those weren't by accident. And they don't just affect people, First Nations people, they affect all Canadians. A breach of trust was not something that you could go after someone for if they negated their fiduciary responsibility to you. And then the Guerin decision, that became something for all Canadians and has moved on to all Commonwealth people. The Maori have used it. The Indigenous people in Australia have cited the Guerin case and the Sparrow case when they've went for their average. Those things said. And some of the stereotypes are true. Someone's an alcoholic and someone's lazy. The same one. But then you have to understand why. And it's the rebuilding of who we are as an identity and as a people, because it was such a laser-specific culture prior to the residential school in order to kill the Indian and the child.
Yeah.
So it's generationally pulled apart. It needs to be generationally put back together. So while a stereotype is also false, it's very much true at the same time. And that's one of those things. To see past, I'm not so much worried of who I was, but who I'm going to be again. And I think that is where those die. But a stereotype many times is used to negate someone of the pride that they can have in order to elevate oneself above them in some way. So to understand the hurt, you're going to understand what was taken away in order to leave such a void. And then when someone's working on it, to go say, well, why did they get this? We are given nothing free. I do not have a free education. if you've seen what I've lost and what my grandparents have lost, you would not consider it free. That's like saying a Holocaust victim was given some artwork back for free. It wasn't given back for free. It was stolen from them in World War II from their family, and it's finally being returned. It's not free. In all those years, it was lost. And the lives that were taken in order to take it will never come back. So nothing is free at this end. It's the returning of what was once there, so we can restore who we are.
Yeah.
So that's one of those stereotypes that I would like to see change.